letter said, Christ, now you got special prosecutors coming around and all kinds of other weird crap. The hell
which particular problem in Georgia you're talking about now? So many things are happening. There's good stuff, there's crazy shit.
Okay, let's start with the crazy and slide into the good. You know, I like to get my good later. It feels better.
So, but what are you complaining about, huh?
I gotta know.
I'm not living it where, you know, are you in Illinois or like Idaho? You're in an I state or Iowa or something.
Oh, got a weird.
I for indecisive. Yeah.
I for insane. Got a note yesterday from a broker that I have to deal with for work who goes, what the hell is going on in your country? And it's like, what are you talking about this time?
Yeah, I know. People are like, foreigners are real negative about us right now.
Because, you know, everybody, if Mother Nature twitches, the market goes down. If somebody sneezes in government, it may go up. I go, what is going on? What is Georgia? Where is Georgia? And why are these people putting in prosecutors against Trump, and will it affect the market? And I'm going, oh, hell. Because
well, you know, he tried to get Republicans to steal the vote for him.
We also,
and even our Republicans didn't like that.
Which means that somebody down there has a conscience. But come on, Gloria.
No one has a conscience. This is all politics.
We all know Southern politics. That's just what I was saying.
Yeah, I mean, they would have if they weren't more scared of getting caught doing it. That's my theory. Not because they felt this is really, you know, because it's Georgia, this is the American way. They don't make decisions like that. Except people like Stacey Abrams and Warnock and Ossoff, who are good, seem really like good people. And there are others. There are, you know, even while all of this shit's happening in Georgia, you know, there's also pride organizations and Georgia Equality and various, and they're very active. And like the way it goes is, I mean, if you're queer, you're probably signed up with Georgia Equality and donating. So you're on their mailing list and they tell you who the progressive candidates are, who they're endorsing. And it's always a good ticket, you know. So we actually have been increasing LGBTQ visibility in some of the oddest places in Georgia. But on the other hand, we also have somebody like Marjorie Greene.
Yeah.
You know, and we also have like a kook up here who owned a gun armory, who ran and got in, I think largely unopposed, you know. I mean, it's very rural. So, you know, but every state is divided. You know, New York City is liberal, but go to upstate New York,
exactly,
like Buffalo, and I don't think you're going to see, you know, I think you see what you see in Georgia. And a lot of it, you know, also has to do with what media chooses to report on and make an issue.
One of my favorite commentators was talking about that day before yesterday. We both follow Bo of the New Column.
And yeah, Bo of the Fifth Column.
And he was talking 2 days ago, I think, about the media, what they follow. But he brought up a more interesting question, which is, are they being manipulated or controlled to follow only certain things and hype them? And then the next day, yesterday, he did one about, let's pretend, what would happen if, talking about a particular CIA kind of operative whose only job is to manipulate public feelings and to be a CIA influencer. And he said they're common in most countries. That, he said most people think of the CIA when they think of the movies and the agents and the cars going up and all of this. And he said most operatives are really, unless they are in to smuggle documents, they're there to manipulate feeling. They are influencers. And then he went on to go, let's suppose, or what would happen if. And I think the example he used was Rush Limbaugh. What would happen if Rush Limbaugh was actually an influencer for a foreign country?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it doesn't have to be just him, because if Limbaugh influences others, then others carry this message and it just keeps expanding.
Correct.
Until he has manipulated consciousness. It was a fascinating thing to look at. And then he brought it back again to welcome to the news media, and are you being influenced or are you actually thinking for yourself, basically?
And I've always felt like the reason that Donald Trump always yelled fake news is because he is a main manufacturer of fake news. And he knows it's fake because God knows how many fake stories he fed to the National Enquirer and how many other fake stories he managed to get across and how much, and how many women he attacked through media by giving certain tips. I mean, Donald Trump is why the police caught up with Jeff Epstein in the first place. But not because he gave a shit about him playing with little girls, but, financial retaliation.
Now, the real question becomes, who is Ms. Giselle about to blow out of the water?
If anyone.
New York.
I mean, oh, I'll hold back.
It's just us.
The whole world is a company town. And we're just at the mercy of choices and decisions that happen so far away from us and so far above us that we don't even know what actually the reality is. For all we know,
I'll give you that.
Really, that's, and having worked among them for a few years, because I worked on Wall Street and my job was like making very wealthy people happy, not sexually, unfortunately, but
yeah, you might have changed
taking their hotel arrangements or whatever, but being among them, actually going to a party where Donald Trump showed up. This was a long time ago, but I'll never forget how everyone hated him in the room. But it's true. He was despised even then. Yeah, by the older money. Yeah. Anyway, but it was just incredible. I mean, it really all happens behind closed doors, often there's some women in there now, but it used to be just old white men sitting in rooms making deals and decisions. Did you ever watch a documentary called The Family?
No, Jill did. She was talking about it. Jill was fascinated by it.
Yes, you know, it's like all the Christian plantation owners got together and decided to run America. That's basically it.
She said, yeah.
You know, keeping women and people of color out.
Yeah.
And keeping it to, you know, it might lift up some men, but, you know, it's, oh my God, it was really terrifying. On the other hand, I watched a very happy kind of documentary called
Happy. Good, give me Happy. Happy is good.
Cherry Grove. Have you seen that?
Mm-mm.
Cherry Grove is about an all queer community that flew under the radar in Fire Island, or near Fire Island. And its peak was in the 60s.
Bummer.
Yeah. But 60s to 70s, it's pretty much gone now or been reabsorbed back into the mainstream. But although there are loads of elders still there.
But
it's just not the same. It was just like gay all the time. Yeah. You know, and everybody owned their own home.
I like it. I like it.
Or they rented a home for the summer. And it was where anybody queer could feel safe and have an incredible summer with all gay people, gay and lesbian people.
Because, you know, I did my thing out on Fire Island in my youth, but yeah. And there were a number of, you know, small gay beaches and things like that.
Right.
And, you know, wandering around the beaches, wandering the parties, and then praying to God somebody could get you back to the ferry.
This is right up your alley, Vlad.
You know, because you had to.
This was like a little moment in time where there was joy for this group of, and it was cheap back then.
Well, yeah. Hell, the ride over on the ferry was only $2.
And there were leather people there.
Oh, yeah. That I remember even in my kinkling youth. You know, you stand.
So, and one of the guys one of the elders really looked familiar to me. And I'm like, have I seen that guy in leather? I don't know. You know, but it's really a charming and valuable documentary, which just shows we were always there seeking community. And what we sought from our community was affirmation and fun. And mutual caring. Yeah, and protection.
And protection.
Yeah.
But I'm going to check that one out. Now, Jill watched the family. And, you know, she started talking to me about it. And I'm going, this sounds like every other mafia family I've ever had to deal with.
It's very dark when you realize what kind of level of power they have had, have always had, or for God knows how long, and still have. And it explains a lot about the rise of this crazy right-wing fundamentalist political stranglehold
Nixon
on American politics.
Newt Gingrich. If you can make politics godly, you've got them. Because then they automatically turn off the brain and step up on the Bible.
He's, you know, floating the idea that all Republicans who are on the January 6th commission should be kicked out of the party or something.
I rather like it the other way around. If you're not on the committee, go. But I want to see whether or not they're actually going to do anything with.
We'll find out.
You know,
being in front of spotlights can change people.
Do you really think so?
Yes. For a politician, they can either become the voice or become the coward when the public is watching.
Because they seem to be.
And you know, Twitter. Twitter's going to be brutal.
But they seem to be slinging so much double talk and bullshit that it almost doesn't matter what they say. If they start it with the flag and end it with God, I could sell you snake oil, sell your soul to the devil, bargain for you, sell you into slavery, take your property or whatever, as long as the beginning and the end are there. You'll just nod and go along with it. I mean, some of the crap that I've listened to out of that idiot in Florida, not the governor,
DeSantis?
The one who's up for investigation now for moving, for fucking teenage girls.
Oh, that guy, Matt Gaetz?
Gaetz, because his daddy is the one who made him. Daddy had the seat before him.
Yep.
And I've actually done something I don't think most people in Florida do, which is I listen to him. And he's not quite as bad as word salad Trump, but you get 3 sentences in, and sentence 4 is a direct contradiction of sentence 1. And he's slinging this shit the same way a good chef just tosses the lettuce to make a salad. But at least the salad's going to taste good. This stuff is just a pile of shit to justify his actions, and people go, yeah, so what if she was 17? So what if she was 17? The Virgin Mary was 12 when she got married, so it's okay. When they hit that one, I went, oh my God.
You got to remember, okay, there have always, this is why human progress is so spotty, in my view. Is that these people, this 30 to 40% of people who are just, for whatever reason, it's not all religious people, it's also yoga people. They're anti-vaxxers, right? A lot of their cults now.
You know my opinion on that, Brame. You've heard me say it before. I have nothing but your respect for your opinion. Humor me. Die. If enough of
you're getting militant now in your old age.
No, I've always said it. I have nothing but mad respect for any choice that anyone makes. I don't have a problem with it if you're willing to stand on your choice.
They're not.
And therein lay my issue. I got mad respect for the fact that you don't want to take the vaccine. I get it. I respect it. I don't have to agree with it. But then don't go rushing to the hospital taking up valuable beds, which is the other side. That's the responsibility for the choice you've made.
A few years ago, but I didn't say it in public. I'll say it now. But, look, science is all about getting to the truth. And sometimes we make to the facts. And a lot of times along the way, we do make mistakes.
Sure.
Because we're looking for the facts. And we sometimes, the first facts show us this. And then, oops, we do more study and the facts change.
Yeah.
But we can prove it every step of the way. So I very much am invested in science as a mechanism to live the basic, follow the truth. My basic, which is, the truth matters. Okay. And so I was thinking, all these people who are like anti-science, why do they have cell phones? Why are they allowed refrigerators and vacuum cleaners?
Let's be a little bit more basic.
Okay, it's not really hard science. Yeah, how many aspirins? How many Viagra? They don't want a vaccination, but are they taking a Viagra to go get hard at night? You betcha.
Different one. Do you have a polio shot? You remember getting that lined up in your arm? Couldn't get into kindergarten without that.
Make them go live for a week in a world where science has not improved their lives. Let them have lice.
Go be Amish. No, that's not fair because the Amish have better sense.
Yeah.
They're only old-fashioned about some things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Gloria,
and they live in a closed community, and they don't proselytize, and they don't go out and say, it's Amish is the true American. Okay? If you want to live in your little world, I mean, some people out there might think we live in our little worlds. We do, but you're not out, I'm not out on the street going, hey, you want to try BDSM? It'll change your life. It's not,
Although it
will. You manipulated power, and I see that.
I'm you in my world.
Right? So that's one thing. But these people are such hypocrites, and they don't acknowledge it because I think they have too many problems. And they have a lot of, it's not just one problem. I would like to say, well, it's all ignorance, but it's not, or it's all religion, but it's not, or it's mental health, but it's not, all the mentally, the people I know struggling with mental health that I know personally, they're all vaxxed. It's not. But there are people who live in conflict with themselves.
And see, you brought up what is the key word for me, which is hypocrisy. Because my mother taught me that you can understand something and not agree with it, mm-hmm. which I do, and in a whole lot of games, something as simple as chess. You're more likely to win if you understand why someone made the move they made. You don't have to agree with it, but understanding it is enlightenment. And my problem with all of it is if you are going to stand on what you say you believe, then do it. Don't do it until it's inconvenient. And then find something else. Either you believe it or you don't. And if you do, deal with the consequences of that action, good and bad. Not good until it's suddenly bad and then I'm changing. You can't play that game both ways. Either you believe it or you don't. And if you're doing this, you're a bullshit liar. It's just that simple.
Yeah. I was very angry from, I would say, 12 to 30, because I was pretty much, my parents were reformed commies, but still socialists, and they were atheists, and, so their political narrative was very helpful to me. And I was more radical than them. And I was really angry. I was so angry at all of the injustice, and so angry. But becoming better with myself. In other words, some of my anger started to evaporate when I was personally happier. And I found new ways to deal with all of that. And underneath all of these people who are, the world is flat, the moon landing is a hoax, science doesn't work, the vax is a hoax, I think they're just people who just absolutely don't have their shit together.
Once again, Gloria, I don't have a problem with that. But don't try to dismantle my shit because you don't like
Well, that's okay. So that's part of the problem, though. And I don't see a way to help them get their shit together because they're really defensive about that.
They like not having that. That's a horrible generalization. But you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying.
I don't have a problem with you being miserable. I even accept the fact that misery loves company. Go find 10 other people who are as miserable as you are. Don't try to make someone who is happy miserable to make yourself feel better.
Well, that's the problem. That's the kind of anger that a lot of them have. You know, as has often been pointed out, a lot of people voted for Trump not because of what he supported, but because of who he hated. They hated the same people. And they saw Trump as like getting rid of all of us.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
That was it.
And that shit doesn't work once you find out that you only had that one thing in common. When you realize he doesn't like George, I don't like George, yay, but he also doesn't like me. And that's the part of that sentence you missed.
Right, and they keep missing that, like right. Everybody told them Trump throws everyone under the bus, and everybody stood up to take a handout for Trump, saying it's not going to happen to me. I'm the special snowflake. Matt Gaetz, for example. Trump's going to get me out and take care of it.
Or daddy will.
Yeah. You know. Yeah. Hi, Vi. How are you? Are you stressed out?
Of course.
No.
But you know, stress for me is as normal as my coffee.
Stop.
But,
Basta.
The last 2 weeks have been everything I ever could have dreamed of. And by the way, I have thrown you under the bus 5 or 6 times, just so you know, so that when you start...
Which bus am I thrown under?
All of them.
No, so what did you do?
When you start getting texts...
Don't make me call Mama Vi a bad, naughty girl. That would be terrible.
Oh, are you kidding? That'd be hot. Let me back up.
All right.
Ph.D.s and P.J.s.
I'm so cute.
When I went to Women of Drummer this fall, which was the first in-person event I've been able to go to in a year and a half, which was true for almost everybody. Half of the fun for me is just enjoying the company of much younger women. You know, to be there, to be at Ramblewood, which is an incredible campground that has so much energy in the soil itself because of all of the festivities that have been there. The ground gives it back to you. So we're hanging out and I'm just enjoying myself and talking to the next gens and, you know, enjoying some sunbathing and whatnot. And the conversations were wonderful. Okay, but that's normal for Women of Drummer. And that's one of the reasons I enjoy it. So a couple of weeks after the event, Tony Celine, who is the kind of mother of that movement, comes back. And by the way, Tony is one of the buses that I've run you over with. So she comes back and says, you know, a lot of the women you talk to want to have more conversations. Wonderful. A lot of the women you talk to are tops in their field. How about we have some fun at the library? You've always wanted to have scholars in the scholars room and blah, blah, blah. So there were supposed to be 3. One had her school change her schedule because she's working on her second PhD or whatever, and is also teaching in Princeton, and so her schedule went wonky. Juliana Navarro is working on her second or third PhD. I can't remember which. And Jenny Johnson is poet in residence for Smith. and is also teaching poetry there and is a double ED in her field. And Jenny was looking for the inspiration for her next book of poetry. And Jules is looking at the cultural aspects of BDSM with people of color or something like that, the legal aspects anyway. She's gotten all of the things that she needs to present, I guess it's the interrogatory or whatever the first level is when you approach to get ready for your PhD, having to present the topic in the background and,
right.
All of that.
ABD, right? All but dissertation.
That.
ABD. Mm-hmm.
And so I'm playing tour guide to 3 PhDs because they all already have them. While they're getting ready for, let's do this again, because having more than one PhD behind my title seems to be fun. And showing them books and magazines, and one was going through John Wuranius's papers on Nitke versus Ashcroft, and and then interviewing other people, interviewing Efrain Gonzalez. That's the second bus I threw you under.
How are you throwing me under these buses?
Because in a week of incredible conversations, one of the advantages of seeing age, is having known the people who to this generation are champions. Whereas when we were coming out, we were all just friends. And so when Jules, for instance, was looking at and reading in depth and Xeroxing or copying and speed reading a lot of the paperwork for Nitke versus Ashcroft.
Right.
And asking basic questions about who is Barbara and this and that and the end result and whatnot. I said, why don't you just ask the lawyer? Huh? John Wuranius is a friend. Why don't you just ask him? Well, when she picked up her teeth and I made the introduction, and they spent 2 hours on the phone and got to the point where they were having conversations that were so far over my head, I was getting dizzy trying to watch them flying by. And then Jenny.
John is wonderful, isn't he? John is so cute.
And then Jenny was looking at some of Efrain's photography of some of the early Pride marches, as well as a lot of his black and whites. And I had said, when you are in the New York area, because she's studying at the Brooklyn, she's got like 3 months at the Brooklyn Institute of something. I said, you're in New York, why don't you contact him? He is, aside from all of his other wonderful qualities, he is a certified tour guide with the city of New York for the gay and lesbian and meatpacking SM area.
Right.
This is a tour you can take with him. Well, there's no way. I'm sure he's got a waiting list. Hi, Efrain. Meet Jenny.
Yeah.
And then they took off and, they were talking for hours. And we were talking about another aspect of this was if you could pick 10 books that would go into a young scholar's library versus a young kinkling, what would they be and why? And I said, for the sake of psychological studies, it would be The Story of O. Stop looking at it as a Sadian text and look at the psychology of the lead character. It is a classic study in the submissive mind. Look at O. For academic history, read Bienvenue's dissertation. That should be on the list. Different Loving should be on a list. One work by David Stein should be on a list. And I went through a list of books for an academic. And they said, well, these people are unreachable. And I went, okay, Gloria is on Facebook. When you start the message to her, Grandma Vi said that I should, so that she doesn't ignore you entirely. And there were 2 or 3 other people that we all did the same thing with. These are people you have read about. These are people you have studied. You're going all the way around the circle. Why don't you just go to the bullseye and ask? So once again, you got, just shoved under the wheel. So when you start getting these messages, you're going to know why you're getting them.
I see. Okay.
But listening to them, watching them discover in ways that were nonlinear and that were more emotional and personal and non-academic was like watching a 3-year-old getting turned loose at Hershey. It was wonderful.
That is nice.
And on some levels, not that I am by any means an academic, but I have enough understanding of that world to know that it's not all books, baby. No. Yes, you are the future judging the past and looking at it as history. But some of your history is still living.
Yes.
Go touch it instead of just reading about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't make people come over and touch me. That would be so uncomfortable.
Could get kinky. Actually, for that, I'll bring you here and let them touch you. But that's a whole different conversation, because that is bus number 4.
There's not a lot of me, so you got to limit the number of people at any given time.
Well, waves, Glory, waves. You're tiny, so not everybody can get to you at once. But the first wave comes in, then the second wave. Because that's bus number 4, actually, because I had said, Tony, why don't you just bring her in for Woman of Drama? And let her have a ball. But that's a whole different ball. And then I've thrown you under the bus with Douglas O'Keefe as well for interviews. Like I said, I just keep tossing you right under the bus. But the phenomenon of yanking that brain out of its academic cradle and still having all of that inquisitive curiosity mixed with all of that academic intelligence in the real world has just been, I've sat there having my own intellectual orgasms for one entire week, just watching them get real. Yes, you're about to publish something new that is adding to this tribe's history and culture. But for God's sakes, will you please stop citing books and magazines and go ask the source?
Yeah.
And
one thing that is, I think there's another, the most important way, in my view, is to actually go and see people play. Because there's nothing like experiential education.
Not just the play, the experience. And one of the conversations we had, I made them watch and it took me forever to find it, a very specific episode of Cosby, where Theo has to write a paper about the March on Washington. And he's got the paper written, and mom and dad, who are active in the kids' homework, go, well, now that you've researched it, read it. And he reads this thing that is not quite as dry as hardtack. And they start talking, reminiscing. His grandparents walk in, and he's sitting there while the 4 of them are reminiscing about the March on Washington. And by the time the episode is over, he's going, wait a minute. Effectively, everything you've talked about is very different. The same facts are there, but all I got was the cold, hard facts of the day and the temperature and the speeches and who was there and so on. You've made it living, breathing, exciting part of me history. And they got it in that they're steeped in a world that requires the footnote rather than the experience. And I said, the experience is what made that footnote to begin with. But now you're quoting the quote instead of going to its original source. And the idea that they could never crossed their mind. And that's the part that watching all of that get just blown the fuck out of their brains to just go ask, was so wonderful and so exciting. And redoing that path to go, if you really want to know, look them up.
Yep.
What I don't, and I still don't understand to this day, and of course, part of it, I think, is a generational issue, because this is a generation raised on the great God, Google. That Google doth speak, and Google doth direct to, and Google doth not direct to the phone book or the Facebook page that says, hi, I'm still here, write me. Google will cite Guy Baldwin's articles, but Google will not go talk to Guy Baldwin.
Right. I know. And people just assume if you're older, you're retired. I still get people saying, is your practice still open? I'm like, yeah. I work all week. Yes, I'm a therapist. That's how I make my money. I'm old, but I'm
Gloria, it was just
pretty healthy.
Exciting. What? It was so exciting. And now, they're all dancing. The one who's in Princeton is pissed that she missed it. Juliana has, quote, can I bring, because they're scholars in residence for a year. Can I bring my friend back from Spain? Because, and I want to tell my whole university, it's like, slow your roll, baby. I don't know if I'm prepared for what you're about to turn loose.
Oh, that's so wonderful, Vi. Congratulations, honey. That's really an accomplishment, too.
So
just having,
I'm taking everybody with me. If I'm going down this road, everybody I know is coming with me.
Yep.
I had Douglas get in contact with J.C. Collins and Lamar Van Dyke and a few other artists and people that I've known for decades and gone, wait a minute, you never heard of their projects. Well, I saw it. I didn't know they were still alive. Let's talk. So, like I said, you're going under the bus. Pulse is going. Lamar Van Dyke. There are about 15 people so far.
I feel like I'm going under the bus. I feel like I'm being raised to the bus.
So, well,
as the bus goes along, they're stopping and picking up a whole bunch of people. Get on board, everybody.
Because I've got to blow these kids backward. I've got a youngin' in my sunroom who has come in to talk about the history of fashion boutiques because she's trying to, she's in the process of negotiating with Collie Morgan, who I think you would remember.
Yeah, I do remember her.
And she's going, but it, with no clue of the history of the dressing for pleasure movement and how
is Connie still with us?
Yeah.
Yeah. I talked to her like 3 years ago, but.
Connie's in upstate New York at a place she bought about 25 years ago, happily retired.
Yeah.
And leading a little theater company up there.
Oh, she is. She's still involved. That's great. Yep.
And, you know, you're trying to reinvent a wheel when all of the people who made the wheels on the bus you're trying to hop on are still around.
And this is Mistress Constance, for those who didn't know her.
Correct.
Who ran Dressing for Pleasure, which was an annual event. It morphed into a magazine and videos. And she originally opened and operated a fetish boutique.
In Montclair.
In Montclair, New Jersey.
But
and we would go from New York out to buttfuck New Jersey.
Hey.
Where the hell is Montclair? Okay. Rutgers University is out there, I think.
Her boutique was based on Antoinette's versatile fashions from the late, from the 80s and 90s, or 70s and 80s, actually, because I knew Antoinette that long, with Antoinette's magazines. Because Antoinette did Reflections, Antoinette did Kinky Contacts, and went all over the world writing about her adventures in these magazines.
This was the original Antoinette to all you youngsters. There's another Antoinette who has another boutique, but she's not the original Antoinette.
And this was the original Antoinette.
Yes.
And
she, I believe, passed, right? She was very old. She was a bunch older than us.
Gloria, I'm not sure. Well, so is Constance. People forget Connie's in her.
Connie's about 87, 90.
She's not quite that old. I would say Connie is hitting about 83. 80,
no.
Between
Last time I spoke with her, she was 86.
I thought she was only about 14 years older than I am. But the last thing I heard about Antoinette, because I got a message from her daughter, and I'm going back 4 years, that she was ill, because Reb died a long time ago. Her husband.
Okay.
Master Zorro, who did all of her photographs. People tend to forget that was her husband.
Okay.
And, money had been up and down and whatever. And she asked me whether or not I would post a GoFundMe, because she was trying to raise some money for Antoinette's care, because she was in second stage, I think, of Alzheimer's. And there were other physical problems as well. And I said, sure. And did, a couple of posts about who she was and how she relates to this tribe's history. But Connie got all of her ideas and her contacts from Antoinette, because Connie came in about a decade later. Antoinette was doing this in the late 70s when she opened Versatile Fashions. That's how long Antoinette had been around.
That was it, Versatile Fashions. How could I forget? I'd forgotten. Yeah.
And she had her thing in.
She was before me, so I didn't know her at all. Yes. I may have seen her somewhere. Connie, I knew very well.
See, and I knew both, because I remember when Constance was just learning the cane, and Nan was teaching her. Occasionally on the backside of another submissive, occasionally on mine.
Nan, God, Nan Barrows. Wow.
So
yeah. So those were the people that were around like my first couple of years.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember them all very distinctly.
And since,
considering I met many of them only like once or twice, but I remember them. But Connie was different. I knew her pretty well.
And so many of the people that I'm talking about, that we're talking about, are cited in academic journals, and you're being studied. I laughed my ass off when they were bringing up references about me for things that I had done 30 and 40 years ago. That, did you know you're cross-referenced here? And I'm going, I don't even know the writer. And just let's go back to firsthand knowledge. While these people can talk to you about their experiences, stop quoting the quote that is quoting the quote that is quoting the footnote that's 30 years old. Go ask. So the bus is stopping, picking up everybody, and I am doing my damnedest to present all of the authors, writers, artists, the reasons you are where you are, to next gens who, like I said, I'm going to burn that academic bus down and do this differently.
Mm-hmm.
And have an awful lot of fun in the process.
Yeah.
So that's been my last 2 weeks. Half the family is sitting at the library and at the center because they all tested or their rapid tests came back positive for COVID. So I've sent all of them out for the real test, because the rapid test.
Yeah, I know. There are a lot of false positives.
Has a lot of false positives to it. So we're waiting for the results so that they can all come here to, have some fun. Finally, we get to open some holiday gifts, but do some general study for, let's see, one is doing another dissertation, one is looking at the history of boutiques, and so on and so forth. So hopefully we'll get test results back today. And
are you all feeling okay?
I feel fine, other than, the injury with the ankle that they're finally about to send me to a specialist to. Maybe I'll finally stop limping. We'll see. But yeah, I knew I was going to pay the piper eventually.
Yeah, it's that age. It's that age where I had to go and buy myself one of these so I don't lose hand strength from my gardening.
I've got the little ball to squeeze. Actually, I have 2 sets.
I feel very macho doing it. I don't feel like an old woman. I feel like, nah. I got some life in me yet.
I've got the ball, but more importantly, they used to call them Quigs balls. The 3 that you have to juggle in your hand.
Oh, yeah.
Dexterity.
Mm-hmm.
They also make great Benoit balls.
I'm going to say.
So the kids occasionally see me running around looking like this and going, now every once in a while
I'm going to be a surgeon in my next life. I'm getting ready. All right.
Sometimes I'll tell them the truth. Sometimes I'll just tell them I'm warming up their Benoit balls.
That's the answer I want. That's a good answer. Anyway.
So that has been my experience. I am setting up interviews with 44, a whole lot of different people. And it's been interesting, Gloria, because in setting up interviews for Douglas, because when he was out here after Thanksgiving, a young man named Douglas O'Keefe,
okay,
who in and of himself has a fascinating background. He is a flight attendant, has been one for well over 30 years, was one of the flight attendants who was in that kidnapping in Mumbai when the plane landed and they wouldn't let everybody, they kidnapped the flight attendants. He was part of that and wrote about it. But he is also a Leatherman who is now doing interviews all over the world, because as a flight attendant, he has that luxury. And when he was out here doing the interview with Jill, and Judy happened to be here, and he got to interview Judy, and Judy and I did an interview together, and it's like, Ms. Johnson, half the people I would love to talk to, I don't know anything, contact information I don't know anything about. So I've started giving him a very long list of people to interview that I can put him in direct contact with. And he's about having orgasms on his chair because he had no idea most of the people, once again, in this academic sphere are still alive, both here in the United States and in Europe. And now with Tainu running all over South America, and we're getting more and more in touch with the Leatherman of Argentina, for instance.
Wow, nice.
And that group, and
I'm all about the internet, the global S&M. I wish we could join all of it together and become a political force in the world. I'm
working on it, Gloria. I'm working on it.
I just love, even though other cultures bring totally different interpretations to some of the stuff.
Yeah.
But I think that's fantastic, actually. I would love to see how S&M is done in every country, I mean, I want to go to Nigeria, and I want to go to Saudi Arabia, and I want to go to Turkey, and I want to see how those people are playing in Israel.
And
they have active S&M communities in those places.
And one of the founders of the public movement is an old friend. He was here in the United States, made his aliyah, and is back and forth because he now has dual citizenship, and has been running back and forth because his lover, Ted, is still here in the United States. And now Ted is about to make his pilgrimage, but the first Mr. Israeli Leather was put on by Danny Premack. And he's the one that said, finding all of these little pockets of 5 or 6 people playing here, and 5 or 6 people in Tel Aviv, and 5 or 6 people here, and being able to convince them that a small public presence is not something that's going to get you stood up and shot somewhere, and nor is it against Torah. So come on out and play. You're already gay, so you're either gay or gay and lesbian, so come on out, be a visible presence. Even if visible simply means wearing a leather vest over your shirt under the suit jacket. Take off the tweed, put on the leather vest, and make your statement that way. And these bits and pieces are beginning to show up, bopping up here and there like little candle lights all over the world. And watching it happen is just awesome. Now the question is, can we connect the dots?
That is a big question. I don't know. But I'm always overwhelmed when I reach out from people. I can't say I won't say what Arab nation, but people who on the outside are devout Muslims having a lifestyle relationship at home, a mistress-slave relationship at home. I'm like, how are you doing this in your culture? Not well. But we're trying,
Yeah.
We're working on it. Yeah. But that's what they both want. And they both knew it when they got married. And, I was so excited to talk to them because they were in a remote, to Americans, what we would be like, what? Where is that? And I'm like, how the heck? But they Googled.
Yes. And Tony,
how did they get to me? They Googled me.
Tony has been having the same experience in India. because of one woman that she interviewed for Radical Rhythms, who it's kind of sex therapy by poetry, I think she said, and then forming a writers group with these women, because that at least is permissible, to find out that they're all basically writing about the same thing, which is sex, slightly to the left of what their cultural norm should be. And how did they get together? By internet. How did they find Tony? Via internet. So, you know, as much as I speak badly about the great God Google, there is some benefit to it, because that's going to be the connection that didn't exist 20 years ago.
I think Google and Wikipedia are the two best things about the internet.
And the only reason
And I'm not talking about Google overstepping all its privacy bounds. That's a whole other issue. I'm just talking about the search function.
And the only reason I'm iffy on Wiki is because so many countries are trying to stop it in their country. Whereas stopping Google is to almost stop everything, because so many different.
And that's why we donate annually to Wiki, right?
Wiki and Google. There is one little section where they allow you to donate through Google to other charities, which is wonderful.
Well, I do that with Amazon. I buy everything on Smile.
With some of the smaller ones, they give you either direct contact links, like if you want to donate to the kids of Tiananmen Square, or
nice.
What was this there's some little place in India that has statues to certain heroes, and I remembered reading about it and just, hi, here's $10, send it. And they're trying to either keep them up where they are or keep the government from destroying them, give them to us and let us move them to other places. And little things like that somebody in Google is sneaking in through a back door. I don't think the company really is thinking about it, but hi, here's a new cause, send it on. And some of them are tiny. You know, these little movements here and there.
Yeah.
They don't need the huge donations. $2 from 10 people can make or break something.
I know. I got an email today saying my contribution to the menstrual pads for girls thing.
Yeah.
I didn't give him much money. You know, anybody can get $10 out of me or $20 out of me. You know, I'm a sucker for this. And today it said it helped 7,000 girls. I'm like, what? Or 1,000 girls. I'm like, what?
We don't think about the difference in the cost of living.
Holy crap, you know?
$10 or $15.
I'm giving them more next year for sure.
What it'll do somewhere else, we don't think about it.
No. And we have so much work to do at home. And for American causes, you need a lot of money.
Well, yes and no. Gloria, I spend a lot of time with Start Engine and 2 or 3 of these other little direct funding companies that Indiegogo and things like that, where all of these little companies are appealing directly to the public with their products or with their ideas. Mm-hmm. Must have been 3 or 4 years ago when Dapper Boy, the little, well, it was a startup then that's dealing with gender neutral clothing, for genderqueer youth, not necessarily even full transition, but gender neutral clothing. And the company is called Dapper Boy. Well, now they're $1 million. They needed money. Hi, buy stock in our company. And I think it was a $50 or $100 minimum for 50 or 100 shares or whatever. It was $1 a share. Do I ever expect to get it, to see a premium on my investment? Probably in another 5 or 6 years. But so what? They just hit their first, I think, $700,000 year.
Nice.
But I got to put my money where my heart was.
Right.
With some little teeny weeny company that had an idea that could be very influential in the long run.
Yeah.
And, as I look at the idea of this there is now a vehicle where they can directly contact the public. So, once or twice a month when I've got some spare time at 2 a.m. when I can't sleep, I go to Indiegogo, Start Engine, and there's one other. And just look at the new companies that are trying to get funding.
Right.
And, some of them I like, but they're not exactly my area, like the Legion, which is, they're trying to start a motion picture company, which in and of itself is a huge headache, that does things that the public wants to see, that would fund documentaries and even some animations and things that show young artists. So you don't have to be in the Disney network or in this network or getting your work stolen by the big boys. Okay, you needed $50. I'm now a stockholder. Don't expect it to go somewhere, but hey, if it does, that's wonderful.
I believe in that kind of support. I really do.
And it tickled me that somebody was smart enough that I think they take 1% to provide a place for some of these companies to get started. So if it works, wonderful. And if it doesn't, I got to try something that my heart believed in.
Yeah, microfinancing. I love it. I love it. So we've spoken for an hour. Could we take a break so I could get more coffee?
Coffee. You and me.
What do you want to talk about more?
I am going to disconnect and then reconnect, and we're going to have our second conference about stress.
Finally. All right. I will be back with high octane coffee.
I'm about to disconnect, so it stops this recording. I will send you a new one so that it will start this link all over again. We both need Java. 8-minute math. I have 1:10. Do I have you until 1:30 or 2?
You can have me till 2 if you want.
In that case, I'll see you in 10 minutes.
All right. See you in 10.
I need fresh coffee.
Me too. Bye.